In today's episode, we're exploring 5 deadly encounters with venomous snakes, from an exotic pet enthusiast's fatal mistake to a construction worker's tragic encounter. Let's begin with the first story, where one researcher's overconfidence cost him everything. It was September 14th, 2015, and the vast wetlands of Florida's Everglades National Park stretched endlessly under the early morning sun. The ancient ecosystem, with its maze of sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps, harbored some of North America's most dangerous reptiles. Dr. Richard Blackwood navigated through the dense vegetation, his boots squelching in the muddy terrain as he tracked the movement patterns of one of the region's most dangerous venomous animals. At 47, Dr. Blackwood had been studying venomous snakes for over 2 decades, building a reputation as one of the country's leading herpetologists. His research had taken him from the deserts of Arizona to the swamps of Louisiana, documenting snake behavior in their natural habitats. Blackwood had survived 2 previous snake bites during his career, experiences that had paradoxically made him more reckless rather than more cautious. He often dismissed safety protocols as amateur precautions, believing his experience made him immune to the dangers that threatened ordinary researchers. Blackwood had earned his doctorate before spending years building his reputation through increasingly dangerous fieldwork. His colleagues often warned him about his cavalier attitude towards safety, but Blackwood dismissed their concerns as the worries of desk-bound academics who lacked real field experience. This particular morning, Blackwood was conducting a solo research project on eastern diamondback rattlesnake den site fidelity, work that was crucial for securing his tenure at a prestigious university. He had been tracking the same population for months, documenting their seasonal movements and hunting patterns. He had consumed several drinks the night before to celebrate a colleague's retirement, leaving him dehydrated and fatigued as he began his morning fieldwork. The remote section of the Everglades where Blackwood worked was 3 miles from the nearest road, accessible only by foot through treacherous swampland. Cell phone coverage was non-existent in this wilderness, and Blackwood had deliberately chosen the isolation to avoid human interference with his subjects. Eastern diamondback rattlesnakes are the largest venomous snakes in North America, with adults reaching lengths of up to 8 feet and possessing fangs that can inject massive amounts of potent venom. They are ambush predators that rely on their excellent camouflage to remain hidden until prey comes within striking distance. Their venom contains powerful hemotoxins that destroy blood cells and tissue, causing massive internal bleeding and organ failure. Eastern diamondbacks are responsible for the most severe envenomations in North America, with their bites requiring immediate medical intervention to prevent death. Blackwood had been following fresh snake tracks through a dense patch of palmetto scrub when he spotted his target, a magnificent 6-foot eastern diamondback coiled beneath a fallen log. The snake's diamond-patterned scales provided perfect camouflage among the dappled shadows, and its massive girth indicated this was a mature male in prime condition. Instead of using his snake hooks and restraint tubes as protocol demanded, Blackwood decided to capture the snake manually to obtain what he called more natural behavioral data. His dehydration and fatigue had impaired his judgment, making the dangerous decision seem reasonable. Blackwood crouched beside the coiled rattlesnake and slowly extended his hand toward the animal's neck, intending to grab it just behind the head in the classic restraint position. The snake remained motionless, its black eyes fixed on the approaching threat. Blackwood's hand moved closer, his fingers spread wide to ensure a secure grip on the thick neck. The eastern diamondback struck with lightning speed, its massive head snapping forward faster than the human eye could follow. Blackwood's reflexes, dulled by fatigue and dehydration, were no match for the snake's explosive attack. The rattlesnake's 2-inch fangs penetrated deep into Blackwood's wrist, injecting a medically significant dose of venom directly into his bloodstream. Blackwood jerked his hand back, but the damage was already done. The snake had delivered a high-volume envenomation, pumping a substantial amount of venom into Blackwood's circulatory system. Blackwood stared at the 2 puncture wounds on his wrist as blood began to flow, the venom's effects beginning to take hold. Over the next hour, Blackwood began experiencing progressive symptoms of severe envenomation. His wrist swelled gradually as the venom began destroying tissue at the bite site, while his blood's ability to clot became increasingly compromised. Blackwood attempted to walk back toward his vehicle, but the 3-mile journey through difficult terrain became increasingly difficult as the venom spread through his system. The hemotoxic venom attacked Blackwood's red blood cells and blood vessels, causing progressive coagulopathy that prevented normal clotting. After several hours of struggling through the swamp, Blackwood collapsed from shock and organ failure, his body overwhelmed by the systemic effects of the envenomation. Blackwood's university reported him missing when he failed to return from his research expedition. Park rangers found his body 2 days later, following the GPS coordinates from his research permit. The investigation revealed that Blackwood had violated multiple safety protocols by working alone without communication equipment and attempting to handle venomous snakes without proper restraint tools. The herpetology community was shocked by the loss of such an experienced researcher, but many colleagues noted that Blackwood's increasingly reckless behavior had made such a tragedy almost inevitable. His death led to stricter safety requirements for researchers working with venomous species in national parks. But Dr. Blackwood's fatal encounter with an eastern diamondback wasn't the only time someone's overconfidence with venomous snakes proved deadly. It was March 8, 2017, and the suburban neighborhoods of Phoenix, Arizona basked under the desert sun as Bobby Chen worked in his converted garage laboratory. The 34-year-old software engineer had transformed the space into an elaborate reptile facility, complete with custom-built enclosures and climate control systems that housed his secret collection of exotic venomous snakes. Bobby had been illegally importing venomous species for 3 years, building a collection that included 12 different species from around the world. His neighbors had no idea that deadly serpents lived just feet from their own homes, as Bobby had carefully concealed his hobby behind the facade of a normal suburban lifestyle. He had learned everything about snake care from online videos and forums, never receiving formal training in handling venomous species. Bobby worked as a senior developer for a major tech company, earning a substantial salary that funded his expensive and dangerous hobby. He had started with harmless species before gradually acquiring more dangerous specimens through underground networks and illegal wildlife dealers. His garage had been meticulously converted with temperature controls, humidity systems, and specialized lighting to accommodate species from tropical climates. His prize specimen was a massive gaboon viper from West Africa, a snake he had acquired through illegal wildlife trafficking networks. The snake lived in a custom enclosure that Bobby had built himself, though the habitat was inadequate for such a dangerous animal. Bobby's lack of proper training and equipment had created a disaster waiting to happen, and his habit of drinking beer while performing routine maintenance on his collection would prove fatal. Gaboon vipers are among the world's most dangerous snakes, possessing the longest fangs of any venomous species at up to 2 inches in length. They can inject massive amounts of venom in a single bite, with their cytotoxic poison causing severe tissue death and organ failure. Gaboon vipers are ambush predators with incredible striking speed, despite their heavy build, and their excellent camouflage makes them nearly invisible when motionless. Their venom is associated with high mortality without rapid anti-venom administration. Bobby had been drinking beer while cleaning multiple snake enclosures, a routine he performed every weekend to maintain his collection. The alcohol had impaired his judgment and slowed his reflexes, making him careless around animals that demanded absolute precision and respect. When he reached the gaboon viper's enclosure, Bobby made the fatal decision to clean the habitat while the snake was still inside. Bobby opened the enclosure door and reached inside with his cleaning tools, believing the snake was docile enough to allow his presence. The gaboon viper lay coiled in the corner of its enclosure, perfectly camouflaged among the artificial plants and substrate, displaying the natural defensive behavior that made these serpents such effective ambush predators. The moment Bobby's hand entered the enclosure, the gaboon viper struck with devastating speed in a defensive response to the perceived threat. Its massive head shot forward, and the 2-inch fangs penetrated deep into Bobby's forearm, injecting an enormous dose of cytotoxic venom. Bobby screamed and jerked his arm back, but the snake had already delivered what would prove to be a fatal envenomation. Bobby immediately called 911, but his location in suburban Phoenix presented a unique problem. Identifying the exact species and locating appropriate antivenom would prove logistically complex and time-consuming. The exotic nature of his collection meant that standard snakebite protocols required modification, as emergency rooms needed to identify the specific species before determining treatment options. The gaboon viper venom began its devastating work immediately, immediately, causing massive tissue death at the bite site while simultaneously attacking Bobby's internal organs. His forearm swelled to twice its normal size as the cytotoxic poison destroyed muscle, fat, and blood vessels. The venom's hemotoxic components began breaking down his blood cells, causing progressive bleeding throughout his body. Emergency medical personnel arrived within minutes and immediately began providing airway support, intravenous fluids, pain control, and continuous monitoring of Bobby's vital signs. They worked to stabilize his condition while frantically coordinating with poison control centers and herpetologists to identify the exact species and locate appropriate antivenom. Bobby was rushed to the nearest trauma center, where doctors continued supportive care while the antivenom was being located and transported. The delay in obtaining the specific antivenom, combined with the massive dose of venom Bobby had received, created a race against time that medical personnel ultimately could not win. Bobby died from hemorrhagic shock and multiple organ failure 36 hours after the bite, his body overwhelmed by the massive dose of exotic venom despite aggressive medical intervention. Police discovered his illegal collection during the investigation, finding 11 other venomous snakes in various stages of poor health. Bobby's death shocked his family and neighbors, who had no idea about his dangerous hobby. The case led to stricter enforcement of exotic animal laws and enhanced training for emergency responders dealing with unusual envenomation. His death also prompted hospitals in areas with known exotic pet ownership to develop better protocols for identifying and treating non-native snake envenomations. However, Bobby's tragic encounter with an illegally owned gaboon viper wasn't the only time someone paid the ultimate price for underestimating venomous snakes. It was June 22, 2014, and the rural farmlands of East Texas stretched endlessly under the evening sky as Jake Morrison drove his pickup truck along dusty back roads toward his final service call of the day. The 29-year-old wildlife removal specialist had been working since dawn, responding to calls from farmers and homeowners dealing with unwanted animal visitors on their properties. Jake operated a small wildlife control business that served the rural communities scattered across East Texas, an area where encounters between humans and dangerous wildlife were common. He had 5 years of experience removing common species like raccoons, opossums, and non-venomous snakes, but his training with venomous species was limited. Financial pressures from his recent marriage had forced Jake to accept jobs he wasn't fully qualified for, including calls involving potentially dangerous snakes. The call had come from a local farmer who reported finding a colorful snake in his chicken coop. Jake was rushing to complete multiple service calls in one day to maximize his income, a practice that often led to careless mistakes. He carried basic equipment in his truck, but lacked the specialized tools and training necessary for safely handling venomous species. The nearest hospital was 45 minutes away through rural back roads, and Jake had no access to antivenom or emergency medical support. Texas coral snakes are among North America's most venomous species, possessing a potent neurotoxic venom that attacks the nervous system and causes respiratory paralysis. They are small, secretive snakes that are often confused with harmless species like the scarlet king snake, leading to dangerous misidentifications. Coral snakes have a distinctive banding pattern of red, yellow, and black rings, but the traditional rhyme used to identify them can be unreliable under poor lighting conditions or stress. Their venom contains powerful neurotoxins that cause muscle paralysis and respiratory failure, making immediate medical treatment essential for survival. Jake arrived at the farm just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the property that made visibility poor. The farmer led him to the chicken coop where he had spotted the snake, describing it as having bright red, yellow, and black bands. In the dim lighting of the coop, Jake examined the snake and attempted to identify it using the Red Touch's Black, friend of Jack Rhyme, which proved unreliable under the poor lighting conditions. The poor lighting and Jake's fatigue from a long day of work led him to misidentify the Texas coral snake as a harmless scarlet king snake. This fatal mistake caused Jake to handle the snake without gloves or proper restraint equipment, believing he was dealing with a non-venomous species that posed no threat to his safety. Jake reached down and grasped the snake behind its head, intending to remove it from the chicken coop, and relocate it to a more appropriate habitat. The snake initially remained calm, but as Jake continued handling it and applied pressure while trying to secure his grip, the coral snake became defensive and bit him on the thumb. It started to clamp down and chewed for several seconds before its small fangs penetrated the skin and injected a dose of potent neurotoxic venom. Jake immediately realized his mistake as he looked more closely at the snake's banding pattern in better light. The distinctive red bands touching yellow bands clearly identified the snake as a venomous coral snake, not the harmless king snake he had thought he was handling. Jake released the snake and examined the small puncture wounds on his thumb, knowing that he had just received a potentially dangerous envenomation. Jake rushed to his truck and began the 45-minute drive to the nearest hospital, but panic and distraction from the snake bite caused him to drive erratically. His anxiety about the envenomation and fatigue from his long workday impaired his concentration and judgment behind the wheel. Jake's vision became affected by stress and fear as he worried about the venom's effects, making it increasingly difficult to focus on driving safely. 20 minutes into his desperate race to reach medical help, Jake's panic and exhaustion caused him to lose control of his pickup truck on a sharp curve. He crashed into a roadside ditch, the impact rendering him unconscious. Jake remained trapped in his vehicle for several hours before being discovered, during which time the coral snake venom continued its progression through his system. The farmer found Jake's crashed truck 3 hours later when he went to check on the wildlife removal specialist who had failed to return for payment. By the time emergency responders extracted Jake from the wreckage and transported him to the hospital, the neurotoxic venom had caused severe respiratory depression. Jake died from respiratory failure several hours after the bite, as the rural hospital lacked the ventilatory support equipment necessary to maintain his breathing until antivenom could be obtained. The investigation revealed that Jake had misidentified a deadly coral snake as a harmless species, leading to his fatal envenomation. The delayed discovery of his crash and the lack of immediate respiratory support contributed to the tragic outcome. His death highlighted the dangers faced by wildlife control operators who lack proper training and equipment for handling venomous species. Jake's widow was devastated by the loss of her new husband, and the incident led to enhanced training requirements for wildlife removal specialists throughout Texas. But Jake's fatal misidentification of a coral snake wasn't the only time someone's lack of knowledge about venomous species proved deadly. It was August 11, 2016, and the vast expanse of California's Mojave Desert stretched endlessly under the scorching sun as Sarah Williams set up her campsite in a remote canyon far from civilization. The 31-year-old emergency room nurse had driven hours from Los Angeles to find the solitude she desperately needed, seeking refuge from the emotional turmoil of her difficult divorce proceedings. Sarah had been using solo camping trips as therapy to cope with the stress of her crumbling marriage and demanding career. She deliberately chose remote locations to avoid other people, finding peace in the harsh beauty of the desert landscape. This particular canyon offered the perfect combination of isolation and natural beauty, with towering rock formations providing shelter from the desert winds. Sarah was an experienced hiker and camper, but her knowledge of desert wildlife was limited. She had never encountered venomous snakes during her previous camping adventures, which had mostly taken place in less dangerous environments. The prescription anxiety medication she was taking to cope with her divorce had impaired her judgment and slowed her reaction time, making her more vulnerable to the dangers that lurked in the desert. The rocky outcrop where Sarah chose to make camp provided ideal habitat for one of North America's most dangerous serpents. She was unaware that the crevices and ledges around her campsite were perfect hiding places for snakes seeking shelter from the desert heat. Mojave rattlesnakes are among the most venomous snakes in North America, possessing a potent combination of neurotoxic and hemotoxic venom that makes their bites extremely dangerous. They are perfectly adapted to desert life, remaining hidden during the day and becoming active at dusk when temperatures cool. Mojave rattlesnakes are defensive when surprised or stepped on and will strike when threatened. Their venom contains both tissue-destroying hemotoxins and nerve-attacking neurotoxins, making envenomation potentially fatal without rapid antivenom and respiratory support. As the sun began to set, Sarah walked around her campsite in bare feet, enjoying the feeling of warm sand between her toes. The anxiety medication had had made her feel relaxed and carefree, causing her to ignore basic desert safety precautions. She was focused on setting up her tent and preparing dinner, unaware that a large Mojave rattlesnake was coiled in the tall grass just steps away from her campsite. Sarah stepped directly on the hidden rattlesnake as she walked through a patch of desert grass. The snake struck immediately, its fangs penetrating deep into her ankle and injecting venom. Sarah screamed and jumped back, but the damage was already done. The Mojave rattlesnake had delivered a clinically significant unvenomation into Sarah's bloodstream. Sarah was 20 miles from the nearest road, with no cell phone coverage in the remote canyon. She attempted to hike back to her vehicle, but over the following hours, the Mojave rattlesnake venom began its deadly work. The hemotoxic elements began destroying tissue at the bite site, while the neurotoxic components gradually affected her neuromuscular function. Sarah's ankle swelled rapidly as the venom destroyed blood vessels and tissue at the bite site. Over several hours, she began experiencing progressive neuromuscular paralysis as the neurotoxins interfered with nerve signals to her muscles. Her breathing became increasingly labored as the venom affected her respiratory muscles. Sarah wandered through the desert darkness, her impaired physical condition and the medication's effects preventing her from finding her way back to the road. The harsh desert environment compounded the effects of the snakebite, as dehydration and exposure to extreme temperature fluctuations added to her body's stress. She collapsed several times but managed to continue walking, driven by survival instinct, even as her condition deteriorated. The cooler desert nights provided some relief from the heat, allowing Sarah to survive longer than she might have during the day, but the combination of partial envenomation, dehydration, and exposure gradually overwhelmed her system. Her neuromuscular paralysis worsened over the days, making it increasingly difficult to move or seek shelter. Search and rescue teams found Sarah's body 4 days later, 2 miles from her original campsite. She had died from a combination of snakebite envenomation, severe dehydration, and exposure to the harsh desert conditions. The investigation revealed that Sarah had been taking prescription medication that impaired her judgment and reaction time, contributing to the tragic accident. Sarah's death highlighted the dangers faced by solo campers in remote desert areas where medical help is hours away. Her family was devastated by the loss, and the incident led to enhanced safety warnings for desert camping areas throughout California. Yet Sarah's tragic encounter with a Mojave rattlesnake in the desert wasn't the only time someone's lack of preparation for venomous snake encounters proved fatal. It was May 17, 2018, and the rural construction site in Georgia buzzed with activity as heavy equipment cleared forested land for a new subdivision development. Tommy Rodriguez operated his bulldozer with practiced skill, pushing aside trees and brush to make way for the planned homes. The 26-year-old heavy equipment operator had been working construction for 8 years, but he had no training in wildlife encounters despite working in areas where dangerous animals were common. Tommy was known among his co-workers for his fearless attitude and willingness to handle situations that other workers avoided. He was supporting his pregnant wife and was eager to impress his supervisors to secure a promotion that would provide better benefits for his growing family. The construction site was clearing habitat that had been home to various wildlife species, displacing animals and forcing them into contact with human activity. The forested area being developed had been undisturbed for decades, providing ideal habitat for various snake species, including some of the most venomous in North America. The construction activity was destroying dens and hiding places, forcing snakes into the open, where encounters with workers became inevitable. Company safety protocols required workers to report wildlife sightings to supervisors, but these rules were often ignored in the rush to complete projects on schedule. Eastern coral snakes are among the most venomous species in North America, possessing a potent neurotoxic venom that attacks the nervous system and causes respiratory paralysis. They are secretive snakes that spend most of their time underground or hidden beneath logs and debris, making encounters with humans relatively rare. Coral Coral snakes are often confused with harmless species, leading to dangerous misidentifications. Their venom contains powerful neurotoxins that cause progressive muscle paralysis, making immediate medical treatment essential for survival. Tommy was clearing brush with his bulldozer when the machine's blade uncovered what appeared to be multiple snakes sheltering independently under debris beneath a fallen log. Several snakes scattered as their hiding place was destroyed, but one coral snake appeared to be severely injured from the encounter with the heavy machinery. Tommy shut down his bulldozer to investigate, curious about the colorful snake he had uncovered. The coral snake lay motionless among the debris, its distinctive red, yellow, and black banding clearly visible in the afternoon sunlight. Tommy assumed the snake was dead, killed by his bulldozer during the clearing operation. He decided to pick up the snake to show his co-workers, thinking it would make an interesting conversation piece during their lunch break. Tommy reached down and grasped the coral snake with his bare hands, not realizing that the snake was only stunned and disoriented from its encounter with the bulldozer. The moment Tommy's hand made contact, the coral snake bit him on the palm, chewing for several seconds before its small fangs penetrated the skin and injected a dose of potent neurotoxic venom. Tommy dropped the snake and examined the small puncture wounds on his palm, initially dismissing the bite as minor due to the snake's small size. His co-workers gathered around as Tommy explained what had happened, but none of them recognized the serious nature of a coral snake envenomation. The rural construction site was 35 minutes from the nearest hospital, and the delay in seeking medical treatment would prove fatal. Tommy's co-workers called 911, but the remote location of the construction site delayed the arrival of emergency medical personnel. Initially, Tommy experienced only mild symptoms and continued working, believing the bite was harmless due to the snake's small size. Several hours after the bite, the coral snake venom began its deadly progression through Tommy's system. The neurotoxic poison attacked his respiratory muscles, making breathing increasingly difficult. Tommy's speech became slurred as the neurotoxins affected his neuromuscular function, and his vision became blurred. By the time paramedics arrived, Tommy was experiencing severe respiratory distress. Tommy was transported to the rural hospital, but the facility had delayed recognition of the situation, delaying his need for intubation. Without access to mechanical ventilation to assist his breathing, Tommy's condition rapidly deteriorated as the coral snake venom caused progressive respiratory muscle paralysis. Tommy died from prolonged hypoxia due to untreated respiratory paralysis, as the coral snake venom caused complete paralysis of his breathing muscles. The neurotoxic poison had specifically targeted his respiratory system, making it impossible for his body to maintain adequate breathing. The small size of the coral snake had deceived Tommy into thinking the bite was harmless, but the potent venom had proved fatal despite the snake's diminutive appearance. The investigation revealed that Tommy had violated company safety protocols by handling wildlife without proper training or equipment. His death devastated his pregnant wife and led to mandatory wildlife safety training for all construction crews working in areas where venomous snakes were present. The incident highlighted the hidden dangers faced by workers in industries that disturb natural habitats. Tommy's tragic encounter with an eastern coral snake became a cautionary tale about the importance of proper wildlife training for construction workers. His death left behind a widow and unborn child, serving as a stark reminder that even small snakes can be deadly when not treated with proper respect. Thanks for watching. Click the next video for the next stories.